Hi, I'm Paul Guppy, Vice President for the Washington Policy Center, and this is our regular update of what is going on in Olympia. They've wrapped up the legislative session there. I'm going to give a summary of what occurred and then talk about our latest events that are coming up and what issues that we're working on. So to start off, I gave regular updates, as everyone knows, all through the legislative session. I did that weekly. And now that the session is over, we'll be doing these about once every 2 weeks. And I'll be giving presentations monthly on what activities the Washington Policy Center is doing. But in the meantime, I thought I'd take this opportunity to give a quick look back at what happened over the 3-month session. And the session ended on April 23rd. And then the governor had until May 16th to veto or sign various bills. So we waited to that point to see how everything came out. The result is that we had a number of wins in the legislative session. We're very happy with that. And I'm just going to touch on some of these quick victories to show that there were some number of positive developments that came out. First, as I mentioned in the past, there were no new major taxes were enacted, but also there was no mileage tax was proposed. The governor even took out a study of a mileage tax out of the transportation budget. We were a little surprised at that. So the idea of imposing a mileage tax on Washingtonians has been pushed off into the future for the moment. Also, an anti-free speech commission that had been proposed by Attorney General Ferguson. That bill died. A proposal by the governor, which would make it a crime to criticize the outcome of an election. That bill wasn't even introduced this time. It failed in the past and appears to have dropped out altogether. There was also a proposal to impose a $2 tax on the sale of every digital device sold in Washington state. That idea died. There were 2 rent control proposals that were pushed forward, mostly by lawmakers from Seattle. Those were both defeated. And so that's good news. A great way to make housing more expensive is to impose rent control. Other positive wins were legislation passed to reduce the nurse shortage in our qualified nursing shortage in our state by allowing qualified nurses from other states to work here. We also got through a study on reducing occupational license barriers. These are professional licenses that often prevent people from finding jobs. We passed good affordable housing legislation, a little bit of a mix because they imposed some new regulations. They changed some zoning rules, which are controversial. But what we liked is that they included permit streamlining. They reduced regulations on building apartment buildings with fewer than 12 units. And a few other removing limitations that will increase the supply of affordable housing. We know that that was moving in the right direction. Another major issue that we tracked all through the session was getting the state to use unused COVID funding to provide tutoring services for students. This bill went back and forth all over the place. Lee Finna testified in favor of it. She showed data that direct tutoring services to students makes up for learning loss more effectively than just pouring money into district budgets. And the bill that had that did not get out of committee, so we were concerned. And then we found that it was added as a proviso in the budget. That means that we had to wait all the way until May 16th to make sure that the governor didn't strike that out. It ended up that he kept it in. So students will now get tutoring services to make up for COVID learning loss. Another proviso that was included was an additional $1,550 for charter school families. As many people know, charter schools are denied access to local levy funding and to capital funding. So the Democrats in Olympia actually short charter schools on funding compared to other public schools. This provision was passed, signed by the governor, which makes up for some of that funding. There was also a major recommendation that we've had it for a number of years, and that is to create a tax transparency website for the state. Very common sense, inform people about how much taxes they're paying. And the governor has line item vetoed that in the past, and this time he let it stay in. Towards the final weeks, we actually began to back off on putting attention on some of these issues because they had been included in the budget, and we actually didn't want the governor to reach in and strike them out. He ended up signing it, which is great. So we will have a tax transparency website. And our concept is you should be able to enter your address and then see exactly how many taxing jurisdictions there are, what the tax rates are, and what public officials are imposing taxes on you. So you can add all that up and see it in one picture. We know that having this on paper is great, but we will be engaged in implementation and follow-up to make sure that this website really is user-friendly and provides information for people all across the state. Those are some of the highlights of legislative victories that we saw. All of this is put together in a report that we just issued called Policy Victories in the 2023 legislative session. Overall, there were 37 outcomes that we had recommended, and those were successfully passed, or there were bad ideas that were defeated. You can see all 37 of them in this new study that we've issued, and that was included in an email that went out on Friday, so you should see that in your inbox. And if not, you can go directly to our website and it's listed there. And with that, I'll wrap up with another positive trend that we've seen, and that is some of the news that we're seeing nationally. So one is, again, Lee, education expert on our staff, has tracked universal school choice bills all across the country. And now 9 states have passed bills that allow broad universal choice for families in their states. You don't have to go to a private school, but if a family decides that that's best for their children, then people in those states can receive some of the funding that they're entitled to make these alternative choices. And the important thing about this reform is that it is broad-based. It's not just a pilot program. 32 states have some form of education choice, but now 9 states have broadened that out to the general. So it's more like accessible for all students in the state. 2 other good pieces of good news, both come from the U.S. Supreme Court. One is that the Supreme Court just ruled in favor of a woman whose house was taken away because she hadn't paid property taxes, and the state kept the entire value of her house. So this is referred to as equity theft, where people have to sell their houses, sell their property, or it's seized by the government. The tax bill is satisfied, and then any money that's left over is just kept by the state. The Supreme Court said that that's not fair, and they struck that down. And now what's called equity theft should be eliminated, and that promotes justice in our view. Another one is the Supreme Court in a major decision on Sackett v. EPA. This has made major news. The Sackett family was trying to build a house. They were stopped by the EPA because of effect on what's called waters of the USA. They were not anywhere near a navigable waterway, and that family just won their case. So what that does is pull back the regulatory state. But from our point of view, the principle is if a government agency, state or federal, does not have explicit authority to exercise power over citizens, then they shouldn't be allowed to do it. They can't just interpret their regulatory authority to be ever expanding. The next case that we're hoping will come up in the Supreme Court is to go after what's called the Chevron case, which has really led to a lot of abuse by regulatory agencies. This decision with the Sackett family is moving in the right direction. And the Supreme Court, we think, is doing a good job in reining in the overweening power of government. So with that, that's the update we have now. Looking forward, we have a number of events coming up. We just had an event in Seattle, a reception. That was a lot of fun. We have a Seattle YP Happy Hour event is coming up on June 21st. We have a major lunch in the Gig Harbor area on June 22nd. And then our Young Professionals program is having another happy hour in Spokane. That's June 28th. We have a July event in the Bellingham area with our supporters in that region. And then our fall dinners on September 15th and October 15th in Spokane and Seattle, respectively. So we're looking forward to a great summer and exciting events coming up in the fall. And as always, if you need more information, feel free to call our office or check our website at washingtonpolicy.org. And with that, thanks for listening.